What's up, dude?
What's up, dude?
That is just a fire username, honestly.
Yeah, no, I did it because people are like, "Sup, dude," and you can be like, "Sup, dude." You know?
I freaking love it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. I appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, bro? How are you, bro?
I'm chilling, bro. Just having a
Do
good
you,
night so far. So
fire, fire. Do you
looking to
believe God
debate.
exists?
Yeah, man. I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
why do you believe so? Why do you believe differently?
Um. Okay. So basically, there's um an argument called the evidential problem of evil, and I think that's a good reason to think that there isn't an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good creator of the universe.
Mm.
That would be a reason. Do you want to talk about that, or do you?
Yeah, I mean,
What?
we can get into that. Can you
Okay.
repeat though? What did you say? Something evil? Something about?
That's yeah, yeah. So there's this argument um called the problem of evil, and it's basically saying that there are things in the world that lower the probability that God exists. And the specific things in the argument that I like to run is suffering of sentient creatures. Okay.
Mm.
So I think that the fact that there's a high ratio of suffering that sentient creatures have experienced in the past and are experiencing currently um, is something that lowers the probability of an all good, all powerful God.
So your basis is like because there's evil in the world,
Suffering specifically, it doesn't have to be evil.
right? Right.
Um, and I can give you reasons to think why that might be true, that those kinds of things lower the probability that God exists, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So first, something that lowers the probability that God exists is or lowers the probability of any hypothesis is when that something is unlikely to come about, to be true, obtain if the hypothesis is true. Okay? Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay. So uh what I think that suffering is, all at least the ratio of suffering that sentient creatures have experienced is something that's unlikely to come about or obtain if the hypothesis an all-powerful, all-good God exists is true. Okay? Okay. So now the reason to think that is if God is all good, then it means that he doesn't want sentient creatures to undergo intense suffering, at least all things considered equal. Okay?
Hmm.
Or do you agree with that?
I don't, and I have a reason.
Okay. Well, why is that?
It's due to the fact that in the Bible,
Uh-huh.
the God I honor, um, he is all good, but you have to understand that um, there's a story behind that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that when Eve ate that apple,
Mm-hmm.
it changed the course of humanity. So
Mm-hmm.
we see in Genesis 1:26, he said, "Let us make mankind in our image and our likeness," something like that.
Well,
He's saying that um, he made mankind
mm-hmm.
for free will, right? So we
Okay.
have free will, and that's why Eve was able to eat the apple as well, even
Mm-hmm.
before, um, even even after she was told not to, right?
Okay.
And she did anyways. And
Mm-hmm.
this apple, the forbidden fruit,
Mm-hmm.
or honestly, I shouldn't even call it an apple. A lot of people we don't know what it is.
It's a fruit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a fruit.
Okay.
But when she ate this fruit, it changed the trajectory of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all
Mm-hmm.
this suffering that you see, all this bad is all because of that. It's just one thing. It's
Uh-huh.
one thing, and the only answer to that
Mm-hmm.
is God, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and He's the only thing that can save you from that.
Right. Okay.
So it's just about your willingness, in my eyes at least, to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior and understand that there is good in the world, but the
Mm-hmm.
only good there is if you follow Him. So, as you as an
Okay.
atheist. If you're
Yeah.
sitting here not accepting him, you're going to have a really hard time to see the good in the world and to feel it,
Okay, okay.
because the
I get
good,
this. I get the gist real
yeah,
quick. Okay, okay. So, uh, um, I, you know, you might say, okay, it is surprising that the amount of sentient creature, the ratio that some sentient creatures suffer in history is, unlikely if God exists. But there's this thing that happened a long time ago where this woman ate this fruit, and that's the cause of it, right? That's what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
That's what the word says. So
Okay. So, there's this thing in probability where if you have something that's unlikely to happen, given a hypothesis is true, like for example, I want to say that suffering is unlikely if the hypothesis God exists, um, it's unlikely. Um, if you add another hypothesis to that, it to help explain, um, for in this case, the suffering. The part where you add the hypothesis, um, it might lower the probability of the hypothesis, and there's reasons to think that. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. Um, Imagine there's someone who is suspected of unaliving someone else. Okay,
right,
with like bad intentions. Okay,
okay,
and that person who's suspected, um, has there's like they found their fingerprints on like a weapon. Okay,
right,
and that the fingerprints on their weapon is something that's like very likely to happen if it's true that they did unalive the person, right? But you could add another hypothesis to the fact that they are not the murderer, right? And say, to make it more likely, and say that well, maybe there was aliens that copied their fingerprints and put it on the knife or whatever. Okay, now in this case, the probability, it would, if it's true that there are aliens that put their fingerprints on the knife, then it does make it more likely that that dude's fingerprints will be on the knife and that he didn't do it, right? But that story is very unlikely,
right,
right? So if you have something like that serves as evidence, but you need this story in order for it to um um not be improbable on the hypothesis, then this if the story is like implausible or unlikely if the hypothesis is true, then the story will like lower the probability. Okay. I might not be explaining it the best, but
no, I catch, I'm catching your groove.
yeah, basically the gist of it is the reason I think that um what what the problem might be is if you say the reason sentient creatures suffer so much is because Adam and Eve ate the apple. Well, it has to be likely that that story is true in order for that to be a good explanation for um the the suffering that we see in the world. Okay.
Right,
So, you could fix that problem by, giving evidence that that story is true or that it's like very likely to be true, if God exists or something like that. But that's like a tough task to do, I would think, you know.
right.
Okay,
So I want to add to my point.
sure.
Just kind of give you a little more context. So when she ate that apple, it was oh, I'm losing my point here. Give me 1 second.
Very good.
All right, well, I'll just move on. I got another point though, so it's okay.
Okay, okay. That's okay.
Uh, so how do you explain? I would love to hear your viewpoint on this.
Sure.
The law of biogenesis states that life can't come from non-life. So this
Hmm.
And it's been tried. There's been
Mm-hmm.
multiple experiments where scientists have gone through the process of trying to make life from non-life, as in no
Mm-hmm.
cells, nothing at all,
Mm-hmm.
just non-life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has never been done.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that points, for me at least, to an
Mm-hmm.
intelligent creator,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, some form of intelligent creator, some person, right? Because there has to be order, right? There has to be
Mm-hmm.
some form of order in the universe, and I believe that order is God.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any, you know, possible way to, I would love to hear your viewpoint on that of how life can't come from
Yeah,
non-life.
I think because the law of biogenesis is talking about biological life, right? It's saying that it's unlikely that life will come from something that's um, not biologically alive. So I think that that kind of thing would only apply to, you know, things that have cells or physically reproduce and things like that. So I don't see why that would be a good reason to think that there's something that's like immaterial or isn't made up of cells that is a cause of life in the first place.
Furthermore, like this just obfuscates the scope of biology with biogenesis in of itself. It's already looking at what's already here with other hypotheses of abiogenesis. They were the origin of whatever material that was. These are completely different categories of domain of inquiry. It would be as if we look at, say, like Newtonian mechanics, and then just say, well, they disprove relativity because these are the principles, and gravity is already asserted to be this thing. With the parallel here would be biology isn't really concerned with the origin of life. It's concerned with the evolution life took and its particular path. With abiogenesis, it's, well, what path even is that and what are the mechanisms for that, right? These are completely different categories of fields.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So basically what Schrodinger just said is that the law of biogenesis doesn't even have anything to do with um or at least that field that where they are talk about that kind of law doesn't have anything to do with uh the origin of life or where it came from. And the second thing is, even if you want to say that that law is true, it doesn't give you reason to think that there's like something immaterial that is like the cause of life.
Mm.
That's how I think about it.
Yeah, like I mean,
Um,
I can grant you like abiogenesis is a bunk theory, but like all that just means is we have more science to do. It doesn't really explain how there's some immaterial being who created the universe.
mhm.
Mm. So can I get a question for the host? Do you know the first cause argument?
Are you talking about the Kalam cosmological argument?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Are you talking about the Kalam cosmological argument?
Yeah, that there must be a first cause for
Yeah,
everything.
I am familiar with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, hey man, I'm gonna get off here. If you ever want to talk about
Okay.
Christ and getting closer to God, I'll be here.
Mhm. Okay. Appreciate you,
But
bro. You're nice to talk to. Okay.
yeah, bro, you too.
All right, peace. Um, what's up? Is it Timmy?
Yeah, what's up? How you
What's up,
doing?
bro? I'm doing well. Do you believe God exists?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Do you think there's a convincing reason to believe God exists?
Well, the main point I got to when I was kind of questioning myself, I used to be a bit more agnostic, but
Hmm.
I think I went through like a really quick atheist phase for like a month or two. But
Hmm.
it was more of a how did everything come to be? Like not even just life, you know. I know he was talking about cells stuff like that,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but even just cells stuff like that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But even just matter, space, time, energy,
Uh-huh.
all of it.
Mhm.
It was more of a how can creation come from non-creation, you know?
Okay. So just to be clear, when I'm asking for a reason to believe God exists, I'm asking for a reason to think there's a mind that created the universe.
Oh,
So specifically, that kind of definition of God is what I'm asking for. Do you have a reason to believe that?
well, I have a mind, and I'm capable of having thoughts, and I'm capable of judging morality. So I'm assuming that from that, if there is a designer, the designer must have created me with a mind capable of doing so.
Okay. So if you have, well, first we have to get that there's the designer, you know,
Yeah.
um, and then we can talk about why you having a mind has, means that the designer has a mind. It actually seemed like if there's a designer, it just entails that it has a mind, so we wouldn't even have to talk about that. But okay, so why should we think that um there is a designer, or if there is a first cause that it has a mind?
I mostly just look at the creation, the fruits of, the mind, I guess you can
Hmm.
say that. Uh, Everything has order or practice.
Uh-huh.
We have, natural laws, scientific laws that don't break, you know, stuff like
Uh-huh.
that.
Hmm. Do you think that if there was a creator of the universe that hates order and um loves chaos and that kind of thing, then do you think that that's possible? That there's a
Um,
creator that is like that?
Set aside all religion.
Hmm.
If there were, say, a mind that hated everything that was good,
No, just
yeah.
it likes chaos. It doesn't have to be hating
Oh,
things
just
that are
like,
good or yeah.
likes messing with things.
It just doesn't like order. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it could be possible,
Okay.
I have a
but
comment.
Hold
Oh,
on, hold
the
on.
only issue
Real
would
quick.
be
all
if
right, all
the
right.
mind doesn't like order, then the mind would just have it be where there is no order in
Right.
general.
So, okay. Now this is where it gets to like let's say it's true that the universe is ordered, even though I'm actually not sure what that technically means, what you mean by that. But let's just say it's true, and we accept that the universe is ordered. Now, that would only, it seems like that would serve as evidence for a designer that like likes order, desires order, something like that, right? And but it wouldn't be evidence for a designer that like likes chaos or doesn't like order, right? So I guess um, you know, why should we think if there is a designer that it has that desire, that it likes order or has a desire that would make it likely that the universe would be ordered or something like that?
It's like, why should we assume that the mind likes order, is what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess it would just be looking straight back to the, you know, creation.
Well,
Unless you want to find a way to ask him yourself,
that
like,
might
can
be a
you actually
problem.
like order?
That might be a problem because that would be assuming
Circular.
that the universe is designed in order to prove that
Yeah,
um and in order to prove that there's a designer, and that would be begging the question. So, it would be like me trying to prove that undesigned universes are ordered. And then you would ask me, why do you think that undesigned universes are ordered? And I tell you, well, look at the universe. It's very ordered. So obviously it proves that undesigned universes are ordered. That's not a good argument because it's just begging the question.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah. If there isn't a reason to think that there's a designer that has that desire or has some attribute that makes it more likely that the universe is ordered, then I don't see a good reason to think there's a designer.
I would think of it as more like, well, if there is a mind that created everything, the mind had to make a choice to make this specific thing in this specific way.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, if there is a mind that created everything, then the
Hmm.
mind must have had some intention behind what the mind was making.
Yeah, you're just saying if there is a designer, then it must have had an intention, right? That's what you're saying.
Essentially, because if the designer didn't have intention, then there would be nothing. It's kind of
Right.
like, you know, let's
And
say you have a ball of twine and you're trying to make something out of it. If you have no intention on what you're making, it's not going to make anything.
yeah. Well, the problem is we're again assuming that if there's a designer, then it would have that desire. But the what I would need in order to think that is that if there's a designer, it would be likely that it has a desire, or it must have that desire or something. You know.
Yeah.
Um. But It sounds like you don't have a reason to think that. So, do you think there's some maybe another reason to think that there's a god or a designer, or I could even maybe I could run my own argument. Up to you.
If you want to run your own argument, that sounds like fun.
Okay. Um. Well, first, it kind of depends if you think that God is all powerful, all good, all knowing.
Yeah,
You
I believe so.
okay? Okay. Do you think that if it's possible for someone to be um good, but um that they um they wouldn't it wouldn't be undesirable for someone else to undergo extreme suffering? Um, yeah, hold on. Let me rephrase that. Do you think it's possible for someone to be good and this person doesn't care if other people undergo extreme suffering and that if they could prevent that person from undergoing extreme suffering without losing anything, that and they still they could be good without preventing it. Do you think that person could be good?
Do you want my religious response or my in general response?
I guess I just want like yes, this person could be good or no, this person could not be good.
Um,
That's what I want.
I would say it could be.
Oh, it could be. Okay. So, um now de if you define good that way, where a person could be like watching someone undergoing extreme suffering and do
Well, not
nothing about
wanting.
it. What?
Well, not wanting. Like, if you want somebody to go through suffering, that's not exactly a good thing.
No, but like, do they have a desire that other people don't suffer, you know,
Yeah, I
all
would say
things equal?
in this situation, does the person have the desire to not have people go through suffering?
Yeah, like, can you be a good person, but if other people are suffering, you don't care?
Not caring is different than not doing something about it.
It's true, but like, if you do care, then that would motivate you to do something about it, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you think I mean, do you think someone can be a good person and they don't care if other people suffer?
If somebody claims to be a good person but doesn't care if other people suffer, then I would say that person is not a good person.
Okay. Okay. Now, um, if it's true that if someone's a good person, that they don't want other people to suffer, right?
Yeah.
Then the next step is, do you think that if the more powerful someone is more likely for them to get what they want?
I would say so. More power, more control.
Yeah, yeah. So more powerful you are, the more likely is what you want will happen. Okay. Well, if God is all good, right, then that means he doesn't want. At least it means that he doesn't want people um, to suffer if he can do something about it without losing anything. And if he's all powerful, that means, it's extremely likely that he gets what he wants, right? Because the more powerful you are, the more likely you are to get what you want, right?
Yep.
So that would mean that if God does exist, it'd be very unlikely that um, lots of people would undergo suffering, or lots of animals would undergo suffering. But if you look at history, um, you see an insane amount of animal suffering and like predation and parasitism and all of that, and in humans too. And so those kinds of things um, would make that hypothesis very unlikely. That's the argument, basically.
So that's the argument. What's the question?
So, um, well, you agreed that the more powerful someone is, um, the more likely it is they get what they want. And if God doesn't want a lot of people to suffer, then it would be unlikely that a lot of people suffer. And if it's unlikely a lot of people suffer, um, and we do see a lot of people suffering, then by definition, um, that fact would serve as evidence against the hypothesis that God exists. Now, you could try to like give a reason why um, God has allowed so much suffering in the world.
Like why he
But
doesn't intervene?
yeah, but then a lot of people have tried to give explanations, and I find a lot of those explanations very um problematic. So, you know, now it's like up to you. Do you want to give um do you want to give an explanation, or maybe you think there's like somewhere in the line of reasoning that I went wrong? So now it's kind of up to you where you want to go with it.
No, no, you're all set. Your argument definitely makes sense. The thing is that um, religiously, I'm gonna answer religiously this time.
Okay.
Um, God doesn't want to be a tyrannical God as described in Revelation, I think.
Hmm.
I think. But essentially, John describes his prayer with God, in which he's like, God, why is it that you've allowed all these, the suffering in the world, there's people dying, this guy sick that I just met, and stuff like that. And then God's answer was just describing every single uh, empire that ruled over the Israelites and enslaved them, like Egypt. They persecuted the Christians, like the Romans, and so on and so on. And the take on it is that God's trying to say, I don't want to be tyrannical because I gave you all free will and the dominion over the earth. So when we say, God, why won't you do something? It's because he gave us the free will to do certain things. He doesn't want us to do bad things. He certainly doesn't. But the issue is that if he did intervene, he would just have to get rid of you. He'd have to get rid of me. Because we all do bad things and we all make really, really bad decisions that honestly, a lot of us deserve to die. In fact,
Hmm.
religiously, I believe all of us deserve to die because we can't
Yeah.
meet God's standards. And so
Uh-huh.
that's why God doesn't intervene, because he would just have to get rid of all of his creation, which he loves so dearly. Hence why
Uh-huh.
he died on the cross to give us a way out.
So, okay. So you essentially what you're saying is that God cares about people's free will, and if people have free will, then it would make it more likely free will, then it would make it more likely that this kind of suffering that we see in the world would happen. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, the idea is that because we have free will and because we have the free will to either choose him or choose our own way of doing things.
Okay. So, if what I said is true, a good characterization of what you said, then I guess one route I could take it is that to think that why would free will mean that it would be likely, if people have the kind of free will that God wants, why would it be likely that people would undergo a lot of suffering? Because, um, like for example, do you think, you know, do you think God has ever caused someone to suffer for no reason?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay. And so, but do you think that God has free will?
Yes.
Okay. So that means you think it's at least possible that someone has free will but doesn't cause people to undergo suffering, right?
Not for, you know, somebody's entire life, I wouldn't say. But that sounds
Oh,
impossible.
it sounds impossible, but you already think God doesn't do that. You think
Yeah,
God has free will and doesn't cause people to suffer. And if it's
because it's not his
possible,
character.
yeah, yeah. If it's possible that God has free will and doesn't cause people to suffer, then it's at least possible, that he creates people that if he can create any possible person, then it's possible that he could create people that have free will but don't cause other people to suffer for no reason, right?
Yes and no. The idea is that we were given free will, and I think the other guy mentioned it. The whole, but we're gonna go back to the classic idea of, hey, you can eat from all the other trees, but just don't eat from this one. But we still did free will.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't understand if you're like agreeing with what I'm saying, because if you are agreeing with what I'm saying, um then it's not true that free will means that if we have free will, that it's likely that we'd undergo all this suffering, you know? And if it's not true that if we have free will, that it's likely to undergo all this suffering, then free will isn't a good reason to think that, um, this kind of suffering doesn't lower the probability that God exists. Do you agree with that?
So what you're saying is that if we have free will, then it would. I'm sorry, I got a little lost there.
It's okay. I can repeat it. So if it's true that if we have free will, that um it's doesn't raise the probability that we go undergo all this suffering because, you know, people can have free will and not cause other people to suffer, like in God's example. If it's true that if we have free will, it doesn't mean that it's likely to people would undergo suffering, then that means that um free will isn't a good explanation for why we all undergo suffering, or animals undergo suffering or anything like that. And if that's not true, then it's not a good it doesn't help explain the suffering we see in the world, and the suffering we see in the world, lowers the probability that God exists.
I can see that. The idea is that our free will is what allows us to cause the suffering in the world because we're incapable of meeting those standards that God put, you know.
Well, do you agree with what I said?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, if there's
Okay.
suffering in the world, then, people would be less likely to believe in God because it's like, well, why don't you do something about
Well,
this?
can you like can you try to like repeat what I said just so I can know that you understood?
Um, you're saying that free will, and if we have free will, if we do,
Hmm.
and bad things still happen, and even though we're like able to supposedly, uh, you know, follow God's example and make good decisions that do not cause suffering, then that would lower the um, possibility of God existing.
No, I was just saying. Okay, let me try to put it as simple as possible. Uh, if um if it's possible for God to have create people with free will, but they don't cause other people to suffer, then free will isn't a good explanation for why they're suffering. So it
Oh, I
doesn't,
see what you're saying.
yeah, it doesn't help reduce um the effect that suffering has on the probability that God exists.
I see.
Okay,
Well,
okay, now can you repeat what I was saying so that I know you
yeah.
understood?
So you're saying that if it's possible for God to make like people with free will who still don't make bad decisions, then it would lower suffering in the world.
Yeah, it would be unlikely there would be it would
Yeah.
still be unlikely that there would be suffering if it's possible that God could create people with free will where there isn't suffering. Okay. Okay, so now you do agree. Do you agree with that now that you understand?
Yeah, if God were to make that, the only issue is that we would be like robots, you know?
Do you think God is a robot?
I wouldn't say so.
But he has that kind of free will, doesn't he?
He has free will, yes, but the issue is that it's not in his character, religiously speaking.
Yeah. Do you think God could create us where it's in our character? It's not in our character to cause other people to suffer.
Uh, I believe that originally that was the intent. The only issue is that we're a little cursed with something called original sin,
Hmm.
hence the Adam and Eve argument.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm gonna save that discussion for another time, okay? Because there's like a couple people that's waiting for a while.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, okay. But you are very cordial, so I appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate it too.
All right, bro. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the
Yeah,
rose.
you're leaving?
Let's yeah. Sorry for making you wait so long, and I'll try to make the next guy not wait so
Yeah.
long too. Um, what did you want to talk about? I don't know what
Me?
to call you. Yeah, books. I
Oh,
want to call you
okay.
books.
You could just call me Abdullah.
What do I call you?
Abdullah. Or Omid.
Abdullah. Okay.
Whatever is easier.
Okay,
Or
okay.
Omid. Okay. So, so like, let's say, like, what do you believe is like the first thing to exist?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Oh, I
Oh,
got needs for that.
so your argument like the Big Bang and then like you don't know what happened before?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say
That'd
we
be your
have like a
argument.
blank. Okay. Let's say we have like a blank like map. It's just like all black.
Okay.
And then like the first star appears. How does that appear? Like, does
That's
nothing make
fundamentally
something?
flawed. How does God appear?
Yo,
Let's
yo, yo,
let's
me or Mike?
bro. Okay, okay. This dude is just crazy.
Yeah,
Okay.
me or
Let's
Mike.
say let's say it's true that nothing can't make something, even though I don't even know what that means really. Okay.
Bro,
You don't
what?
know what that means. Okay, can you give birth to yourself?
Bro,
Um, no,
I
no,
gotta
no.
live my own life stream at this
No,
point.
look.
This is
No,
so
no, no, no.
ass.
It's fine. It's fine. Let's say it's true that nothing can't make something, okay? Now, now that we know that that's true, or we're granting at least for the conversation, why should we think that um, God created the universe or something like that?
Wait. First, you have to understand why nothing can't make something.
Dude, he
Okay,
granted you that.
yeah, we're pretending that's true.
Okay,
Okay?
okay. If you agree, if you understand that, then you would know like there's a creator. So you have to
Okay,
first
now
understand why. Like
when you
you
say
shouldn't
there's a
pretend.
when you say there's a creator, are you just saying that there's a cause for the universe?
Yeah.
Okay. But let's say I can agree, if there's a cause for the universe that, um, as an atheist, it doesn't necessarily, at least I don't have a good reason to think that the cause of the universe is a mind, is all knowing, all powerful, all good, or anything like that. I don't have any reason to believe that if there's a cause of the universe, it has any of those properties. Okay. And so if it could be that the cause of the universe is just none of those things. And if it is none of those things, then I'm happy to still be consider myself an atheist. Okay. So, um, why should we think if there's a cause of the universe that it has any of those properties, where it has a mind or it's all loving or anything like that?
Okay, first of all, since nothing can't make something,
Hmm.
like if nothing and nothing doesn't make something, so you have to have a creator for that. Like
Okay. Yes,
without parents, you
yes.
won't have a child.
We
Without
already agreed. We
like
already agreed.
without
Okay, this is
I
just
agreed.
trivially true and just
so
obfuscates the Yuji
there's
question.
necessarily a creator.
Okay, there's necessarily a creator, and by a creator, you just mean a cause. And I just told you that if it's true that there's a cause of the universe, then if it doesn't have a mind or isn't all-knowing or all-powerful, then I don't consider that to be a god. So, could
Yeah,
you
yeah.
give me a
God is all
reason?
powerful, all
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Could you give me a reason to think that if there is a cause of the universe, that it's all-knowing, all-powerful, all good, or has a mind, any of those properties?
God is all knowing, all powerful because he willed everything. Akhbarjan, shut up. Is the one who's like who you can't compare to. He's the one who created everything. He's the eternal. He can't die or like be born.
Abdullah,
You
what
realize
do you?
like all
What's up?
those properties can be ascribed to the universe, and we have similar explanations in
There's
terms of
non-comparable to
hypotheses.
him.
Okay,
Yes,
so
there is.
okay, Abdullah, what was my question to you? Do you remember?
Your question is like how is that like attribute to God? Like
Or
what
why?
like the attributes
My
for God?
my question wasn't what the attributes of God are. My question is, why should if the attributes people say God has, why should we think if there is a cause that it has those properties?
Because of all the things that happen, all like everything that's created, everything that's like brought up to this life, all the universe, all the things that are unseen.
Okay, so you're saying everything that exists is a reason to think that if there's a cause, it has a mind, it's all good, all powerful, all knowing.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
Dude, Yuji, you're
Yes.
like the government with all these grants.
So many grants. Oh, okay. So why should anyone think that, everything we see today is a reason to think that if there's a cause of the universe, that it's all good, all powerful, all knowing? Why should we think that?
Why should we think that? Because that's like the thing that created us. And there's like everything you
Oh
see,
my
like
God.
it brings you like to believe that there's a God. You're saying
No,
why
Okay,
I'm
should
so
just
we
saying
think that
like
there's God?
you can have similar explanatory power if you just ditch the all knowing or all powerful part. He's just saying, what's the symmetry breaker between those two?
yeah. Because look, I just asked you, what is the reason to think if there's a cause of the universe, it has those properties? And you just told me because it has those
Why it has those?
properties.
Why do I think it has those? Why do I think it has those properties?
Yeah.
Okay, if I can't create everything, but God can, there's none comparable to him. And then he's like the one who has like everything perfect.
Oh my god.
How can we believe he's all perfect? Is because he's the first thing. He's the one who creates everything. He knows everything. And then there's none comparable to him. He's
I think
perfect
you're
in all his attributes.
I think you're a bottom from all this begging of the question you're doing. But like,
It's okay.
suppose that is the case, right? Like we can also grant like the same explanation under like some metaphysical naturalism. All
Is
Yuji's
what I'm saying
asking,
not making
no,
sense?
no. All Yuji's asking is, let's take the view of metaphysical naturalism and let's take this God hypothesis. Let's take this God hypothesis and let's compare their properties and let's see which one has the symmetry breaker. So, what are you getting to that has these properties, and how are you getting there? That's all he's asking.
Okay, you're saying how do I know like that like God is most powerful and like the creator of everything?
How do
As
you
Like
know
his
if
opposed,
there's
attributes?
a cause of the universe that it's all knowing, all powerful, or all good? How do you know that?
Okay, first point, how do I know there's a cause?
No, 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 no. Stop,
Since
stop, stop,
okay, I
stop,
already
stop,
said
stop,
that.
stop, stop. Not how do you know if there's a cause? Not, sorry. It's not how do you know there is a cause. Let's say it's true that there is a cause, okay? If there is one, how do you know it has the properties all good, all knowing, all powerful?
Okay. Since he's the first, then like, and he's the creator, he knows what he created. That's the first thing.
Okay.
So he's all knowing.
Okay. Respectfully, I don't know if I can. I don't know if this is gonna go anywhere because you're still not answering the question.
I'm saying since he created everything, he knows everything.
That's just to beg the question.
Okay, if someone create
And then
okay, hold on. If something causes everything, then it has to know everything. If something is the first cause of everything, it has
no,
to know.
since I believe he created since he created the first thing, no, since he's the creator, because like nothing doesn't make something, he's the creator of that, like the beginning.
Yeah.
He's the creator, and the creator is all knowing
Okay, look.
because he knows what he creates.
Okay, so earlier you agreed that by creator you just mean it caused the universe. Okay. So if something is the cause of something else, um, it doesn't mean that it has to have any knowledge, right?
Mm, No, it's not like he's not like an object. He's the one who created it.
Yeah, I want a good reason to think that the cause of the universe is not an object and is like a person.
Okay, a star or like let's say like H2O. You need to like know how to like okay, let's say like a phone. You need to know how to make a phone. But like for like a star, you can't just like make it like without a creator. You need to like just like a phone, like you need someone to make it. Like it's like in
You
certain
can't do it.
ways. But for like God, he's the one who created it.
Yeah.
He's the one who created the star. Like let's
It,
say like if the star was the first thing.
it's all good. Um,
Bro.
I'm just gonna move on, all right, bro? But I hope you have a good night, okay?
Okay, good night.
All right, bro. Peace, bro.
If I if I if I ever questioned becoming an alcoholic, that conversation would have threw me over the edge.
If you were sober,
Yeah, if
yeah,
it ever came down to like if I wanted to relapse, like that would be the conversation that pushed me over the edge.
gotcha. Okay.